Good morning. It's early morning. I find that when I get a thread of thought that comes through, I'm going to have to get up and do it right away because otherwise I will lose that. So this morning, I just want to warn you that I will be talking about my attempted suicide and that it may trigger things for you. So use your discernment on whether you want to watch this or not. When I was, pardon me, when I was 16, my mom and dad separated. My dad and my younger brother moved to Grand Cache, where he lived with his sister for about a year and a half. When they moved, my mom moved from the south side of the river to the north side of the river so she could be closer to her job. And in doing so, I had to go to a new school. At my old school, and I think I was in about grade 10, grade 11, something like that, I had started skipping a lot, and so my marks had dropped a lot. Um, when I moved to the new school was very academically inclined. I had to leave the very few friends that I had, and moving to this new school and not knowing anybody, I was extremely introverted and very, very shy. So it was a real tough time for me. Um, I remember that at one point in an English class, I had what I call a hack attack. And it was a panic attack, but it was coughing. And the more I coughed, the more I panicked. I was coughing so hard I couldn't control my coughing. My eyes were watering. I was coughing to the point where I felt like I was going to get sick. And I was so embarrassed that I ran out of the classroom and I went home and I told my mom later on that night that I was quitting school because I could not go back and face that class with them knowing that, that I had embarrassed myself. My mom was really upset and she tried to talk me out of it, but there was no way. I was not going back. So I quit school when I was 16. And not too long after that, mom told me that dad was moving back home. And that's when I tried to commit suicide. I sat up with mom one night. She was drinking a rum and coke, and I asked her if I could have one. She let me. When she went to bed, I continued drinking rum and coke, and I took aspirin. And she found me, and my uncle drove me to the hospital. I remember they gave me something to make me sick, and they gave me a bucket, and they left me alone. And I barfed and barfed and puked for I don't know how long it was, but I know that the muscles on my sides and my stomach were so sore. My throat was just absolutely raw. I could hardly swallow. I could hardly talk. There was a psychiatrist that came in. He introduced himself to me. He asked me a couple of questions, but uh, I I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what to answer. I was so sore and tore up inside that I don't think I could have anyways. So it, it, the, it didn't last for very long. And I could tell that he was not interested in really pursuing what was going on with me. So I only remember him asking me a few questions. And then he took my hand and he shook it, said something like, I hope you'll be okay. No, he didn't say that. I don't know what he said, but he was shaking my head. And I only remember leaning over our hands and puking in the bucket, even though I had nothing left to puke. So from that time, when I got home and I was so sore and my throat was so raw, I remember saying to myself, I am never, ever, ever gonna get sick like that again. And in the 50 some years since that time, I have never physically barfed or puked. That's how strong our mind can be, either for the bad or for the good. So just kind of think back in your own life. When was the last time you got sick because of the flu? Or because you drank too much? Or any numerous reasons that makes you physically barf. And I never have. I felt sick. I've gotten close to being sick where, the saliva starts coming down, but I've never, ever puked. Even when I've wanted to, I haven't been able to. I've stuck my finger down my throat. Nothing. And where I'm going with this is that during this last 2025, the year of the snake, when you're shedding everything, and I have mentioned that I've been doing the healing work. Well, there was one morning where I woke up and I felt like I was going to get sick. And the saliva started to come, and it was such a strong feeling. I thought, better. I went into the bathroom and I was sitting on the floor with my head by the toilet, and I was thinking to myself, is this the time that I'm finally going to be able to let it go and get sick? And I didn't, but it got me thinking about why, what is the trauma behind this not being able to get sick? And the letting go was the big thing for me, because it's like, okay, there's something here that I need to really look closely at to be able to release something, to let it go. So I spent some quiet time and I really went deep. Took me back to when I was, when I had tried to commit suicide. And I'd never ever visited that before, so it brought up a lot of feelings. And to be able to look at it from an adult as opposed to a 16-year-old, and knowing a lot of the things that I knew now, the tools I have now that I didn't have when I was 16. At 16, I just buried it really, really deeply. But it was always kind of there to remind me when I couldn't get sick. So going back and looking at it, it was, I thought of the trauma that was behind it, the trauma with my dad, the trauma with moving to a school where I knew no one, and the loneliness and being so scared. It brought all those feelings back for me. But the invisibility, the feelings of low self-esteem, no self-esteem, lack of self-worth. It brought all those feelings back for me. And then I started thinking about, well, that's who I was back then, but that's not who I am today. Today, I am a healthy, um, happy, wiser person than I was at 16. And I realized that at 16, that part of me was stuck, was locked in to all those feelings and everything I experienced when I was 16. And it was keeping me there. But I'm not that person anymore. So again, I was just being guided by my guides and angels. They were with me this whole time. Well, they were probably helping me to experience this. So in my mind, I was thinking, I need to heal that 16-year-old part of me. So visually in my mind, I took my 16-year-old hand and I was telling her about how awesome my life is now, and that she had never experienced any of that because she was locked into all that trauma. And I told her how beautiful things were for me now and that it was okay. I gave her a hug and I said, come with me to experience what things are like for me now. And then I reached out to my future self and I held her hand. And I said to her, I know that there is way more beautiful stuff coming for me. And with my 16-year-old self, myself now, and my future self, I ask that we all come together as one so that we can all experience what is on the horizon for us. And there again is my sacred number 3. So that was pretty powerful for me. And it just reinforced to me how strong our mind can be, that we can say something and it's there, it's hardwired, and it doesn't change unless we change it. So I'm not so sure I want to change the part about not getting sick because it's been kind of nice. But letting go of that trauma was a real release, and it felt like a really big one. I also want to talk a little bit about my relationship with my dad, because I've only talked about how awful it's been. But there was a time after he moved back home, and I moved out as soon as I could. So things started to get a little bit better for me, and mom and dad ended up buying some property that it was 2 quarters of land, and it was a couple of hours drive away from the city. And when my dad moved out there, it changed him a lot. He opened up, and I think that's the happiest that my dad has ever been, or that my dad ever was. My dad has passed. But being out at the land, he seemed to blossom, and his sense of humor, which was always really he was a very funny man. He changed a lot and he became a lot happier, which made his life a lot easier. And I remember my sister had moved away from my older sister had moved away from home, and she's always been far away. My younger brother and my younger sister and I, we spent so much time out at the land because it was a safe place for us, and it was a safe place that we could interact with my dad on a totally different level. And so he had built a garage to live in while they were gonna build their house. And I remember going up there, and then at that point, I was by myself with him. I was about 21 years old. And we were talking, and I don't know where I got the guts to ask him, but I asked him why he treated me so badly. And my dad gave me the biggest gift I have ever gotten because he told me the truth. He explained that he was in the Korean War at the time. He had come home when my older sister was born, so he was there for part of my mom's pregnancy. He was there when he went to the hospital with her when Leslie was born. And he carried her in his arms in the taxi on the way home. With me, he was in the war again, but he couldn't come home when I was born. So he wasn't there during any of mom's pregnancy. He wasn't there when I was born. And the first time he saw me was when I was 9 months old. And I remember there being a picture in the paper. And the headline, there was a picture of me or of mom holding me, and dad was facing us and looking at us. And the headline was something like, "Soldier sees daughter for the first time in 9 months." And dad said to me, he said, "Even though I knew your mom would not be unfaithful to me, I never felt you were mine." And so I guess for him, with all his anger issues, and I've always kind of felt that my dad was he had mental health issues. My mom said that when he came back from the war, he wasn't the same man that left to go to the war. So I'm sure that contributed to his mental health issues as well. But in that moment of him telling me that, it just reaffirmed in my mind that, yes, it wasn't me just thinking that he was treating me worse than the others. It wasn't me thinking that he was being hard on me and that, everything was fine, that this is the way it is, this is how people act. It just reaffirmed to me that, yes, he treated me badly. And even though I had the reason why he treated me badly, and I totally disagreed with it, it freed me in a way that changed me. And it also freed my dad in some way as well by admitting to not only to himself, but to me that, yes, he had treated me very badly. Now, he never apologized for it, but it gave me a better understanding that it wasn't me, it was him and his perceptions. And after that, it changed the dynamics in my relationship, and I couldn't do anything wrong. There was a night and then my mom and dad, they built the house and they were living out there. And us kids were still going out there a lot. And there was one night my mom phoned me early in the evening and she asked me, she said, "Could you come out and talk to your dad? Because he's talking crazy and I'm really worried about him." So I drove out there and my dad walked around the land for about 2 hours. I can't tell you what the conversation was because I don't remember it. I remember there was a full moon. I remember it was so beautiful. Everything was lit up and we talked. And whatever was discussed, whatever was said, seemed to help him because he was okay when I left. And then he never had those feelings again, or at least not to that strength. So my dad and I had a really, really good relationship after that. When he was passing, he and I had some really, really good talks. He had been a smoker and he had lung cancer. And when he as the sicker he was getting and we would talk, I would ask him things because I was starting to believe in God, in creator, in the universe. And I was asking him questions, knowing that he was going to be passing soon. Did he believe in God? And he said, maybe, but I don't know. And I asked him if he was afraid of dying. And he said, "No, I'm not afraid of dying." He said, "I came close so many times during the war." He said, "I'm not afraid of dying." So I said to him, "I'd like you to come back to me. I would like you to, when after you've passed, I want you to communicate with me or send me a sign or do something to let me know that you've arrived safely." And he thought that was kind of a neat idea. So I came up with this plan and I ran it by him. And he was just staring at me the whole time I was talking about it. And I said, "Would you be willing to do that from the other side?" And he looked at me and he said, "No, it's too complicated." And I just kind of laughed and yeah, we left it at that. So the first time that my dad actually came to visit me after he had passed was I was volunteering for a 12-step program, parents that were coming to 12-step meetings and they needed babysitting for their kids. So I would babysit the kids while they would go to the meetings. And it was downtown in kind of a sketchy area. So usually when I left, it was later at night and it was dark. And so I always tried to park as close as I could to where the building was. And I remember one night it was in the summertime, and I had walked to my car. It was dark out. I unlocked the car, and I sat inside, and I was just getting ready to leave when I smelt this cigarette smoke, and it was so strong. I panicked because I thought somebody had gotten into my car and was sitting in the back seat. And in fear, I looked in my rearview mirror and couldn't see anything, and I turned around to look to see if anybody was, hiding behind the seat, and there was nobody there. But the smell was so strong, I thought, "Oh, I don't remember smelling it when I walked here," and I rolled the window down, and I was smelling, and there was no smell outside. So I closed the window again, and I was thinking, "Cigarette smoke. Dad, is that you?" So that was the first time that I kind of had an inkling that now I know for sure that it was dad. Then I wasn't too sure. But he has come to visit me and done things where, um, so I have 2 bathrooms. I have one at one end of the trailer that's my bathroom off my bedroom. I have another one at the other end of the trailer. And the one at the other end of the trailer one night, I was watching a movie, and I could hear the fan on in the bathroom. So I don't use that bathroom, I use my own bathroom, and I thought, "How did the fan get on?" So I went into the bathroom, and I flicked the switch, and it wouldn't turn off. And I kept flicking it, and the fan would not go off. So I flicked the light switch, it would go on and off, but the fan switch wouldn't, and I thought, "Well, that's really weird. Don't tell me that something's busted and I'm gonna have to get an electrician out." But I went and I finished watching the movie, and by the time the movie was over, the fan had shut off, and I was thinking in my mind, that's kinda weird." And that happened a few times. And finally, I started thinking, "I wonder if that's dad coming back and showing me he's with me." And when it happened another time after thinking that thought, I went into the bathroom and I said, "Okay, dad, I know it's you. I know that's how you're showing me that you're visiting me." And then it never happened again. Another time, he would hide things on me. And it took me a long time to figure out it was him, but he would hide things on me. So I have a little thing at the front door that I can hang my car keys and my house keys and stuff on. And that's where I'd always put them. And sometimes I couldn't find them. And it's like, where the heck are they? And they would disappear just long enough that I'd be panicking, and then they'd show up in some really obvious place that I had already looked, and they knew they weren't there. So it was kinda driving me crazy because I thought, "What's going on with my mind? Is my memory? Am I losing my memory?" And little things like that would happen. And then the big one was when my mom passed away, I kept a jacket of hers. And I had put the jacket I'd hung the jacket on the back of the chair by the table, and when I went to get it, it wasn't there. And I was hunting high and low in this trailer, which is not very big. I was looking all over for this jacket that I had put on the chair, and that was my last memory of where I had put it, and there was after a while, there was, like, there's no other place in this trailer for this jacket, and I thought, "I must have left it somewhere." So this went on for about 2 weeks, and every once in a while, I would look for the jacket again. And one day I came home, and there was the jacket hanging on the chair. And I thought, "Oh my god." Like, "Okay, dad, I know that's you now. I know it was you that was moving things around that I couldn't find or just making them disappear." I don't know how he did it. But I said to him, "Dad, you gotta stop doing that because it's driving me crazy and I think I'm going crazy. So please don't do that anymore." And it stopped. So I firmly believe you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, and I don't blame you for not believing it because it does sound crazy. But I know for me that that is my dad. And the fact that we talked about him doing something to show me makes it even more true for me. So again, going from, an extremely abusive childhood and being in the dark for so, so long, not just for me, but for my dad as well. To have this experience when I was 21 that freed up both him and me, brought way more light into both of our lives. And knowing what my childhood was and my feelings were towards my dad, to have the love that I had for him and the love that he had for me, that he would show me, made such a big difference for me. And I am so, so grateful I asked that question, because my life would have been totally different if I hadn't. So if you're in a relationship that has been really, really tough, maybe ask the hard questions. It might change things up for you. If you physically can't ask the questions, write a letter. Pour your feelings out in the letter and send the letter. You may not ever get an answer back. You may not ever get an I'm sorry or forgiveness, or you may not get what I received in getting the truth. And that saying, the truth will set you free, it certainly worked for my dad and myself. So yeah, and even if you write, I've heard if you write the letter out and you never send it, but burn it or whatever. But for me, and I'm not saying you have to do it, I'm just recommending to take that step and just see where it goes. I also was able to forgive my dad for everything that he had done to me. And I was pretty sure in my mind I had forgotten him until I took my Reiki training, which was really, really intense. And at one point during the Reiki training, there was an exercise that we had to do, and I can't remember the whole thing, but we had to write something down and sleep on it. And then the next day in the course, we had to write down what came to us that night. We had to write it down and then read it out in front of the class. So I had had a dream that night, and in the dream, there was this great big huge ship, and it was stranded on the beach. So it was half on the beach, half off the beach. It was like a big liner. And people were leaving to get on the ship, and the only way they could get on was my dad was standing at the very, very top on the deck, and there was a long rope to the ground, and people had to climb up the rope. And there was a young girl, she was about 12 years old, and she was too scared to go up the rope. And I said, no, it's okay. You'll be able to do it. And I started to show her by climbing up the rope. And I got halfway up the rope, and I was looking up at my dad, and he wasn't looking at me. He was looking straight ahead, but he knew I was climbing up the rope. And I got halfway up, and he let the rope drop. And I woke up at that moment, and I was like I was re-traumatized all over again, that my dad deliberately let go of the rope, and I fell, and it was awful. But I wrote it out, and the next day at the class, I was so upset, I couldn't read it. And I gave it to the woman next to me, and I asked her, "Can you read this for me?" And she did. And Lauren was the name of the lady that was doing the training, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, well, you have abandonment issues with your dad." And I was thinking to myself at the time, I was thinking, "But I've forgiven him. Why would I still have these issues?" So we finished off the rest of the training for the day. I went home and I pondered it for so long and it bothered me. And I went to bed that night and I had the same dream. But when it got to the point where my dad let go of the rope, the ship started to turn on its side as I was kind of falling down the side of the ship. And I saw a handhold and I grabbed onto it. So I didn't fall to the ground. And I knew in the dream, I didn't see it, but I knew in the dream I had climbed up onto the deck. So in the morning, I felt so much better after having this dream that I told Lauren about it. And she said, "That's the power of Reiki." She said, "Would you be willing to talk about what happened in front of the class?" And I did. And that's when I really forgave my dad. And that proverbial saying of, the weight being lifted off your shoulders, I could feel that. I could feel that heavy weight just releasing and feeling so much lighter that I knew in that moment I had truly forgiven my dad. So I think I will leave everything here. Forgiveness has been a really strong point in my life. I was able to forgive my dad. I was able to forgive my ex-husband. I was able to forgive my mom, and I was able to forgive myself. So, forgiveness for me has been really, really important. Dreams have been really important. For a long time, for many, many years, I had a dream journal. And I would write my dreams down because they were so weird and wonky sometimes that it's like, why would I dream something about like this? What does it mean? But in the course of writing down the dreams, sometimes I could see a bit of a theme in them, maybe relating to something that was going on in my life or something that had gone on before. And after a while, it got to the point where I didn't know what the dream meant, but as I started to write down what was coming to me, then it would just flow and I would just write down, well, this is what it means. I haven't written in my dream journal for quite a while because I haven't had any really strong dreams that I remember. And when I do have a strong dream now, I don't have to do the writing. It just comes to me. This is what it means. So I would recommend doing a dream journal. They really do bring messages from the higher powers. And when I say higher powers, I mean my guides and angels as well as creator. So just maybe another little tool that you can play with and just see where it takes you. It's always awesome to have as many tools in your toolbox as you can. So I am going to have some breakfast and talk to you later, and be kind to yourself. See you later.